Hello, my name is Daniel, and welcome to Only Fails. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.
All right, so Daniel, what has been your experience with failure?
I know a lot about failure. Most of my life I failed. Um, basically, I started having a lot of failures when I was younger. But when I was 8, I was very angry and bitter towards my mother due to the fact that my biological father walked out. Um, I failed as a brother. We'll go more into that later on. I failed as a husband. I failed as a professional provider to my community. Um, I experience failures a lot. I try so hard, but no matter how far I get, there's always a roadblock in the way. I don't stop fighting. The biggest failure I think I've ever caused was to let my family down due to my addiction. And I'll get more into that later on.
Okay, so how was your childhood?
For the most part, my childhood was okay. From as I can remember, from when I was little to 8 years old, it was all right. Happy, average American family. My dad left my mom when I was 8. I was bitter and angry. Blamed my mother for it. This was a really rough time. I think this was in '94, I do believe, because 2 years later my grandma passed away. That would be my mother's mom. She passed away from ovarian cancer in '96. My mother was devastated. And during this time, my mom also met another man. I'm not going to say his name. This would be my first stepdad. He was very abusive, very verbal, mentally, physically. He would abuse my mom. He would abuse me. He would abuse my sister. When I was 12 years old, this man forced me down and molested me. I didn't say anything to anybody. I was ashamed and felt so dirty. I finally got tired of his abuse. One day he came home from work and was screaming and yelling at my mother, and I couldn't take it anymore. I went back into my mother's closet, grabbed a pellet gun, shot him in the head, get him off my mother. Unfortunately, because that's considered a violent act, I got in trouble. And this is what started my incarceration throughout my life. And I think the incarceration had a big toll on my life. I'll get more into that later on when that question's asked. I still blame myself today on certain things with my first stepfather. I knew he despised me because of, one, I wasn't his kid. It reminded him of my dad. And two, he felt threatened. I don't know why, but he did. But for the most part, from age 4 to 8, my childhood was okay. But from 8 on till I left home at age 16, constant struggles. School, constant behavior issues at school, at home. I guess you could say I had authority problems.
So after you shot your stepfather with a pellet gun, you were sent to like juvenile hall?
Not at first. I was put on house arrest and probation. Like I said, throughout the course span, I was rebelling. I was angry, so I didn't listen to authority figures, but led me into incarceration. I was 3 months detention for that. I was put on 2 years probation, got off probation, but through the whole probation period, I was non-compliant. I was always in and out of juvenile because of it.
How are you non-compliant?
I would stay at home. I went into this again, so I started smoking weed. So I had dirty ways. I'd run away from home when things got bad between my mom and I. And let me tell you this: my mother she did her best. She did her best. It was me that caused a lot of the issues. Um, so finally, the judge that I had in that case, set it up and just made me talk out the rest of my time, which was 3 months. So that was my first time ever in incarceration.
So you get out, then what happens to you?
I got out free and clear, no probation, no ankle monitor. I was a happy kid. I was free, Things were good for a couple months, and then my mom and I we didn't never really got along. At age, I think, yeah, 14, but she remarried to a guy who was a professional mechanic. I mean, he invented a tool for Dodge, got it patent. Fortunately, he died of prostate cancer. But anyways, so from 14 to 16, I'll go over that. I started uh, having images of what happened to me with my first stepdad. I wanted to block it out, so I started drinking heavily. I also started smoking weed, and I was going to my friend's house. His mom was supplying it. I was ditching school, cutting class. Uh, my mom and I were always constantly fighting, constantly. I'm the oldest out of 9 children. I'm also the black sheep of the family, you could say. What not to do. Um, when I was 15, no, 16, I ran away from home to Utah with my first wife because she was in the foster care system. To go see my biological dad. And we took a Greyhound all night long, got to Salt Lake City, paid for a cab to Tooele, Utah. Um, this was a big slap in my face. We get to his parents' house. I was so excited to see my biological dad. I haven't seen him at all since I was 8. I get there. He gets there. Cops show up, arrests my first wife, and he takes me all the way back up to Boise and returns me to my mother and tells me never to speak to him again.
Well, that is rough. That is really bad.
So when I got back to Idaho, I still, of course, went back to school. My first wife, we met at Capitol High. They transferred to Boise High, and I stayed at Capitol. Um,
So you got married in high school.
no, I did not. I got married when I turned 18.
Got
I
it.
left home shortly after I got back. Um, I left home when I was 16, just a couple months before my 17th birthday, with my first wife, because she was a minor too at the time, obviously. We moved to Burley, and that's when I found out that she met her biological mom, and she's from Mexico, and her dad is a drug smuggler. I was in Burley for about 7 months before her and I split up, and I came back to Boise. Um, by then, I'm already drinking full blown. I've already done meth. I've already done coke. I've already done, acid shrooms. You could tell. You name it. Trying to numb myself from reality. Of course, I wasn't going to school, obviously, because I've been bouncing around a lot. So I got back from Burley. My wife and I, first wife split. We're high school sweethearts. Um, and this is where it's going to tie into my very first serious charges ever. So I go back home. Of course, I only stayed for a couple of weeks with my mother, and we just didn't get along. I met this. So I'm out on the streets, roaming the streets. I met this girl who is now my biological daughter's mother, who is now my daughter's 18 years old. Uh, Her parents were kind enough to let me move in and stay with them and her. Of course, one thing led to another. Teenage boy, teenage girl, living in the same room was going to happen. So I became a father at age 17. I got the news in the dollar store parking lot, and I didn't know what to do. I kept that to myself until my mother. Um, then my ex shows back up in the picture. Starts a whole bunch of mess for me unraveling. Tells the school resource officer that I threatened her with my dad's M16 military assault rifle, that I was harassing her on the phone. So I get charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault and battery with a deadly weapon and 2 counts of telephone harassment. I was charged and arraigned on that, and I took it to trial. I beat it because one, there's no way a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old boy would get possession of an M16, especially from my dad. My dad had a armory card where he had to lock up his weapon, and they take account of everything for the next shift. And then one thing's missing, everybody gets called back. So there's no way I had possession of a military assault rifle. And the second charge, I didn't have a phone. I didn't have any money to buy a cell phone or anything like that. And at that time, I didn't know I could enter into getting a cell phone because I wasn't 18. So the charges were dropped. I'm not dropped, but they were dismissed. They're still on my record that I was charged, but never convicted. Where I'm at now, so I'm at 17. Okay, so during the time when I was being processing through the juvenile courts for these major charges, I forgot to tell you, this is when my mom found out she was going to be a grandma. And ultimately, this is what broke the camel's back with this one. I didn't speak to my mom for 7 years. She told me to get an abortion. And now I understand why she said that. She was looking out for me. But at the time, I was so upset and hurt that she rejected my child. And I told her I never wanted to speak to her again. I didn't talk to her for 7 years. It took my dad coming up from Nevada to come to my job with her and told my other employee that he needed to speak with me and it's going to be a while. That was the first time I ever talked to my mother. After that, my mom and we've had a rocky relationship because my grandfather had substance abuse problem. This is where I get it. I learned now. He was a heavy alcoholic in the Navy. So my mom and I had a lot of issues because I had substance abuse problems. She told me that it reminds me of her father. And after my grandma died, he drank himself to death. It took him 3 years. He was 6 months retiring from the Navy. And he was a chief petty officer, got busted down to 3rd class for drinking on base. And one night he got so drunk he fell asleep. It was during the winter and got double pneumonia and died in the hospital. I didn't know I had an addiction problem. I didn't know it came from family members. I just wanted to have fun, being a normal teenage boy, but I took it too far.
So drugs really messed you up?
Drugs and alcohol, yes, they did. What I know now, if I would have known then, no way. No one touched it. I touched it because I wanted to block out the trauma that I went through.
Yeah. So eventually you get your life back on track.
Yes.
And you become a medical assistant.
Yes.
So what was that like,
So
as a medical assistant?
I had to work really hard to get, in order to get accepted to college, I had to go back to finish my degree, not my degree, but my diploma. And then I got accepted into the medical science at Boise State University. I loved it. It was a rush. Very fast-paced, stressful, and fun sometimes. You gotta know your stuff. People's lives are on the stake. There was days that I wanted to walk out because I couldn't handle it. But there's also days where we had our good days where we see patients go home after beating, cancer or, staph or whatever. Over half of the healthcare professional population has substance abuse disorders. Because we do also see a lot of trauma. I went on my externship, I went on an ambulance ride to a call. This one still sticks with me. 2-year-old girl face melted due to hot grease because she reached up and grabbed the pan from when the parents got done cooking. Melted her face. Dead on scene. I still can't get that little girl in my head. So I also have seen stabbings, I've seen shootings, I've seen rape victims. I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen people try to hide drugs from the cops, so the cops bring them in, and we have to get him out of there. I've seen a guy sit there and, well, he came in. I'm not gonna say his name due to HIPAA law, but he had a Coke bottle stuck on his for 12 hours. And this is the first and only time I've ever heard a doctor go, "What the are you thinking?" But for the most part, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I got accepted to go to OSU for nursing. Unfortunately, I didn't make it. But
When you were working as a medical assistant, were you using substances then?
not at first. Not at first. I had a really bad tooth pain one day. I was working in the ER, and one of the doctor that I was practicing under noticed, and I asked if everything was okay, and I told him I got a really bad toothache, taking Tylenol, not cutting it, and I've never heard of a Norco before at this time. So he wrote me a script for 30 Norco 10s. And so when I got off work, I went and got them filled, and I took them when I got home. Biggest mistake in my life because it was the best damn feeling I ever had. That's what got me started with the opioids. I lost my license due to opioids. I despise opioids. One thing I can honestly say is I never took any pain medication from a patient. Told myself that if that day ever came, I'd walk away. But I was getting, 30 to 200 oxys or Vicodin or not Lexapro, but Loratabs or morphine back then.
And you were taking those from the hospital?
I was getting prescribed.
I see.
I also I took prescription pads back in the day, because I knew how to write scripts.
So you wrote your own scripts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I understand that you got arrested trying to steal textbooks from a college bookstore. How did that happen?
Funny. I mean, so I knew about this little hustle because obviously I went to college for my degree. Once the administration of the hospital I worked for at the time caught on that I had an addiction problem, they fired me. So I was going through withdrawals, and not proud of this. I have done it 3 times before I got caught. On the 4th time, I went into the textbook, the student union building, and I'd steal $1,000 textbooks and go back and return them for cash. So the first time I ever did that, I got $1,500. On the 4th time, this is when I got busted. I walked in. I just got out of jail the morning before of a misdemeanor hold that I had to do time for. And so I was going to bad, and I went to the sub building, grabbed 3 textbooks, $1,000 textbook, $800, $500, and I get out on the side where the BSU Stadium is. I go out that door, and I get confronted by the employee. And I said, "No, I paid for these." He goes, "No, you did. Do you have a receipt for this?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And I wound up giving him a receipt that was in my pocket. I didn't know what it was. And he tried to put his hands on me, and I pulled out a pocket knife. And I said, "You really want to do this?" And took off running. I forgot that there was a substation on campus. I didn't make it very far. I was surrounded by 8 squad cars with guns drawn to my head, as I should have been. I was arrested, taken down to the detective's office. I asked for my lawyer. They took me to Ada County Jail, booked. I was held on a $105,000 bond, bonded out the next week. Took me a week to bond out with $10,000 cash. Didn't stay out of jail for that long, 2 weeks is all it took. So I got turned in with a warrant. My addiction led me to prison. I can honestly say that. I was charged with burglary, officially charged with burglary, 1 count aggravated assault, 1 count aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and 1 count with a weapon enhancement. I was facing 15 to life with just a weapon enhancement count. The burglary, 10. The aggravated assault, 20. I found myself in some really serious shit that right then. When the judge finally read me the penalties and fines and for each charges, I didn't know what to do. I panicked. Those are my only felonies in my life. And I think I had a pretty fair judge. I pled down to burglary. They dropped the ag assault to assault, misdemeanor assault, with time served, and dropped the weapon enhancement. The day that I got sentenced for my burglary, I go back to county, and I get charged with 2 counts of check fraud for bouncing checks out of my bank accounts that were closed. So I had to go back in front of the same judge, and basically he ran them all concurrent, gave me 1 plus 4 for a total of 5. No, originally he gave me 1.5 plus 7.5 for a total of 8. If I complete a rider, I flopped my rider after 6 months. We went back in front of the same judge, and the judge, he goes, well, can't release you today. Seems like you have some mental health problems, Mr. Elwell. This is what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to relinquish you. You don't ever want to hear that word. Relinquish means the court's done with you. They've given up on you. To the Department of the Corrections for a term of 1 year to no more than 5 years. Good luck to you, sir. Made me eligible for parole that day. I sat for a year and a half. Made it to RDU. That's where the yard's at. ISC, Idaho State Correctional Institution. Every inmate that gets convicted of a felony, goes to prison, has to come through this. I go to what's called 15 houses, RDU. That's where you get classified. And at the time, I was there in RDU for 6 weeks. You cannot get any commissary. Only thing you get is hygiene. But of course, we have our ways. After the 6 weeks was up, I went to 7 House. That's Old Death Row. I was actually housed at the Old Death Watch, where they put the inmate on his last final 24 hours. That was scary, creepy. And then I was placed in 24 House. And then I got the news I was going to Idaho Correctional Center. At the current time ran by CCA, Correction Corporates of America. At the time, Idaho Correctional Center was ranked 9th most violent prison in the United States. And I was going there. How did I find myself there? I was scared, but I could show it. I get there, walk through metal detectors. Never seen them before. I was given my stuff, and I walked to ABC, JKL, ABC. That's where all the politics, all the gangbangers, all the higher ups are at. That's North Wing. West Wing is where all the, I guess you could say, let's put a term lightly, where all the rejects would go. People who didn't want them, or people because they were different, or people because they're dropouts, or whatever the case may be, a sex offender. We don't want them. We have to keep a clean house. So I was placed in ABC pod. I was in C pod. There I witnessed 2 people died. I saw a CO get stabbed in the neck by a lifer. I'm not going to say. He died. I saw an inmate get stomped. Every bone in his body broke because he snitched. The dude that he snitched on went 128 years. He died 3 times on the way to the hospital by life flight. I've seen rapes. I don't really want to get into it. I've seen a lot of drugs. I've seen a lot of drugs there. I've seen, they had iron boards. They had iron boards with iron, and these 2 people were fighting over a dude. 2 gay guys were, and long term short, the other dude got smashed out with an iron and bled up and down the tier. I was at ICC for my pathway. I had to do a TC. That's why I got sent to Cottonwood, a therapeutic community. Now what that is, you're supposed to hold each other accountable for your actions. And it was a good concept, but how they did it was supposed to be staff and inmate interaction, not an inmate ran program. So they ran it as an inmate ran program. There was corruption, there was extortion, there was bribery. So when I got told that I had to go to the pie building, I went to the pie building. I sat at pie 3 for a day, and I went up to the counselor and said, "Fuck this! I ain't doing this. I'm not going to sit there and do this program. It's stupid. Me sitting there giving somebody a bag of coffee who doesn't have anything, even though it's against prison policy, just to help him out because he doesn't have anything. I'm not going to go after him and extort him, but I understand why. They have those policies, but." I said, I'm not going to sit there and be held accountable because I gave somebody food. That's how I was raised. And I told him I'm refusing the program, and I'll top the rest of my time out if that's the case. So I sat at ICC for a good year after that, and then I was moved to the farm. And then I was paroled out August 21st, 2015.
Have you been back to prison since?
No, I have not been in trouble for over 10 years now.
You were saying that the prison that you were at was considered the 9th most dangerous prison in the United States. That prison got the nickname Gladiator School.
All right, so Gladiator School, man. So basically, So this is why the state took over. One of the reasons why the state took over the prison. They found out that the guards were betting on fights, that the inmates would fight each other. They'd bet. So Idaho does not give out medical parole at all. And in one case, this guy got medically paroled, and you can look it on YouTube. Just type in Idaho State Correctional Center beating. And what happened was this guy got severely beat up, and you could clearly see the correctional officers in the bubble watching. And this guy's just sitting there going to town on this dude, sits down for a minute, gets up, gets a drink of water, and then goes back and starts beating him up again. This guy that got beat up literally got medical paroled. That's unheard of in the state of Idaho. I've seen a 92-year-old man out on the yard with a walker because he violated his probation or parole. So it's unheard of in Idaho to give somebody medically paroled. So that's one of the reasons why the state took it over. Another reason why the state took it over is because, CCA is corrupt. Guards bringing in drugs. So the guards sitting there giving inmates information that they shouldn't be given. Betting on inmates who fight. Sexual rape, molestation, all that stuff. And this is stuff that hasn't been brought to the general public because the prison don't want people to know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah, for sure.
They had metal detectors in there. Another thing too, I remember my first night there. Just got there just before chow, and I sat down, and next thing I know, another dude sits right across from me. And then this big old dude comes walking up, slams his tray down. I look at him, and he starts going to town on the dude. Next thing I hear is, everybody down, everybody down. And I get maced, not maced, but it's called OC sprayed. Yeah. And they lock you in the cafeteria. They take a bar on the outside, and they lock it, nobody in and nobody out. So I'm sitting there just in agonizing pain until they take care of that guy. And I'm orange, it dyes your skin orange.
Yeah. So there's a common belief that prisons are basically universities for criminals. Do you think that's true?
Yes and no. Yes, because when a person's so used to being incarcerated, it's called
institutionalized.
Yeah, institutionalized.
Yeah.
They got nothing to lose. I mean, they're so used to a schedule, a routine, and they come out and commit crimes so they can go back. I've said I literally see the prison's officials escort an old man out that's been there for 40 years. He didn't want to go out. They literally drag him out, picked him up by his feet and hands, and escorted him out.
So a guy resisted leaving prison.
Because he's been in there for 40 years. He didn't want to go. He was scared.
Yeah.
Now, another gentleman that I know, I'm not going to mention his name, he's a close friend of mine. I talk to him daily. Vehicular manslaughter. He's 19 years old. Turned his life around. He's a general manager. Gave his life to God. Has 4 beautiful kids. Has a wife. So that's why I say yes and no. Because, yes, sometimes people don't get corrected or rewire their brain to, this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this. Recorrect that criminal activity. And there's others that it does hit. But ultimately, I think it's up to the person. If they want to still continue to live their life of crime, they're going to keep doing it. If they want to change, they're going to make a change.
How's your life going now?
Rough. It's been rough, honestly. It's been rough since I lost my place in Springfield, Oregon. Let me tell you, man. Think you trust, somebody that for a long time you didn't think they would do you dirty. I got evicted from my Springfield apartment because my brother decided to not pay the property management and I was under the impression he was because I was subleasing from my brother. Next thing I know, I get hit with a $13,000 eviction bill while he's sitting in state prison in Idaho because Idaho issued an agent's warrant for his arrest. And I thought he was paying the property management or his girlfriend at the time. And nope, we get hit with a $13,000 eviction order. And then I have a 21 mentally challenged son, his stepson. And I had to tell him, but somebody who has ADHD, bipolar, explosive bipolar, and a learning disability where he's 16 in the head, it'll never change. That was a rough one.
Yeah.
So once we were back on the streets, headed up to Portland. Lived in Portland in 2006, didn't think anything of it, and I get off the bus, and I was like, no, we can't stay there. We stayed in Portland for about 2 months. We were running a shelter, helped run a shelter that was able to give us a little house and all that stuff. But here's one thing you know about Portland. Locals there do not like homeless, and they have every right. We and my wife and my son were gang stalked out of Portland. They literally followed us for 3 days because we were homeless. They made sure we got on the last train to head to Vancouver, Washington. As soon as we crossed that border, we weren't followed anymore. We stayed in Vancouver, waterfront. We were camping out on the waterfront for about a week before we got a bus ticket back to Spokane. Spokane's even more of a shit show. You guys think fentanyl's bad here? You haven't seen anything. Just saying, prepare, because it's coming. And it's going to be coming hard.
You think a lot of people are going to become addicted to fentanyl?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because fentanyl in Washington is 12 cents per pill.
It's pretty addicting stuff, huh?
Yeah. It's cheap, too.
12 cents a pill.
12 cents a
Street
pill.
price.
Yeah.
So basically no barrier to entry.
No. The fentanyl problem is bad in Washington, Spokane, Washington. Bad. My wife and I were misled. We went to Spokane because she believed her friend lied to get into town that night. Her friend wound up flanking on us, and we wound up at the west. When I say this, you're going to be like, no way. So Spokane, Washington has the biggest homeless shelter on the West Coast. It can house up to 360 people. It looks like a detention or a FEMA death camp. It has 2 gates around it. It has security that walks around like you're in prison. No running water, so they had porta potties from one end to the other. Lights on 24/7. Drugs in and out constantly. I've seen 3 ODs there, 3 deaths. If you go up and ask for more food, you're a piece of shit. And it's called the Track Resource Center, Trent. It's off Trent Street in Spokane. It's called the Track Center. And what's funny is the stater took me and my family there, saying we'd be okay. My boy is so messed up in the head because of what he saw there. My boy is not the same boy that he was when we left Idaho. And I blame myself for that.
So what would be your ideal life? What's your goal? What would you like your future to be?
Well, I've had a problem being in and out of homelessness constantly. I want to be stable. Be away from drama. Be away from the drugs. Be away from people who just want to use me because of my kindness. And that's why I always find myself into being homeless, because I always trust too much. Good job. Because I'm a felon, 3-time felon, I can't stay in Idaho. I'm only here for about a couple of years, and then I'm probably going to be locating somewhere else that will be more understanding. Let's just say Idaho will always be my home. Boise will always be my home. But I messed up. And Idaho does not take too kindly to felons.
If someone out there is being sexually abused, what advice would you give them?
It just depends on the situation. if you feel like if you can trust that person, you need to get help, talk to somebody, get a friend involved, because one thing I learned when I told my mom I was sexually molested, she didn't believe me. She went in denial. But know that your own mother didn't believe you at first. Kind of messes you up in the head. I would, if you do get sexually molested, I'd seek help immediately. Go to a hospital. They're there to help you. They're not there to get you in trouble. Of course, you are going to have to deal with the police, but they're on your side. No one should be molested. And I do agree that death penalty for child molesters.
Yeah, I don't think you'd get too much argument from people on that one. You have anything else you want to close with?
I would hope whoever sees this will learn from my mistakes in my life. Partying, fake friends, fast women, they all come and go. Stay away from the drugs, stay away from the alcohol. If you can't handle it, if you can't handle your alcohol or your drugs, just stay away from it. I lost family, I've lost my degree, my career, respect, house, everything. I lost everything. And I'm on the verge of losing everything again.
Thanks for sharing your story. This takes courage and bravery, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you.